We're going to get started. Dakota, I'm going to let you introduce yourself and take it away.
All right. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. All right. We are going to get started with the Community Land Trust portion of the day. Tough spot after lunch. So there is pop in the back. It is Fago. So this is the most Michigan conference menu I've seen in a while. Awesome. All right, guys. So we're going to introduce ourselves. Then we're going to go into kind of a 101 on what community land trusts are, some common questions, some examples of CLTs here in Michigan. And then we'll have time for Q&A for you guys, kind of dig into some questions you might have specifically. Oh, hello. So my name is Dakota Reel. I am from ICCF Community Homes up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. I help manage the Community Homes Land Trust program up there for that program, but I also am their senior real estate development manager. So I kind of have some development experience as well. And then.
Good afternoon. My name is Jay White. So I am current acting president of the Frankfort area community land trust in a small community up north in Frankfort, if you know where we're at. And my background really is in real estate. I was a real estate broker, developer at Crystal Mountain. I don't know if any of you have ventured up our way to Crystal Mountain as a resort. I was there and responsible for most of their construction over a 30-year period. Retired and then found myself in Frankfort saying, well, how can I help this community? And as a realtor, we certainly recognize the challenges of first home buyers, or really anyone who wants to live in a community, in a resort community specifically, find a place to own and call home. So that's what involved me in about 2018 in our housing movement in Frankfort. And I'll share more on that in a bit.
Right. So getting into what community land trusts are. So a community land trust is a nonprofit organization that provides a lasting community asset or investment, typically in affordable housing, in the community, a specific community that they serve. There are over 300, some statistics today say over 400 community land trusts across the United States, with over 40,000 homes among them. Just to give you an idea, here's the most recent map of community land trust across North America, including those purple ones are Canada. Sorry, couldn't find a map without them, but they're pretty close. And we're excited to say that there's actually a ton of community land trusts already getting started or started here in Michigan. So if you in the room are kind of thinking, hey, this sounds like something I might be interested, you're not alone. There are actually 16 organizations, cities, nonprofits who have either already started a community land trust or in the process of starting one already. There's a statewide organization of which Jay and I and Anita are a part of. It's called the Michigan CLT Coalition. We meet once a month. It's a peer-to-peer support group, and advocacy coalition. We intend to just support the work of other CLTs across the state. But I want to show you this just to show how broad this impact is, right? When we talk about how, later in the presentation, how flexible this model is, how community land trust can really be used to address different housing needs and different housing issues. You can even already see on this map how it's being used in kind of different settings, rural, urban, all sorts of stuff. All right. So one thing that we hear a lot when we talk about community land trusts is, well, this is really new. This is something totally new, totally foreign. And the reality is that there are actually 60 years of history here in the United States of community land trust. It actually started in rural Georgia after farmers, Black farmers, were unjustly removed from the land they were sharecropping after trying to engage in civil rights activities. So the farmer who owned the land found out that the farmers who were working those fields were attending meetings, were trying to organize, and he simply removed them from their homes, from their livelihoods, everything. And so they came together, they pooled their assets, and they purchased some land. But they said, we want to impact this property much longer than just right now. We want to have an impact on it tomorrow. And we want to ensure that our children's children have the opportunity to purchase a home at an affordable rate. And so they went abroad and learned how communities were co-owning and sharing ownership of not only homes and farms and everything. They wanted to see how that was happening. And that's when they brought back the idea of community land trust then in the early 60s. And that idea grew in size. It actually was the reason why Habitat for Humanity is here in the United States today. That organization was birthed from that original farm and original community land trust in Georgia then. And then years later, we got our first urban community land trust in Cleveland, Ohio. Kind of a cool Midwest story. So again, even though this might be newer here in Michigan, we might be hearing more about it today because it's getting a resurgence in need. This actually has a deep-rooted history here in the United States, and it's actually got a cool history in rural and agriculture and small communities. So what is kind of the theme? The theme of community land trusts are that they all serve a very specific community. They're always going to be rooted in either a city, in a specific neighborhood, but they are always going to identify a specific area of place that they will serve. They will never be nationwide, and they are often discouraged from being statewide. Sometimes in communities or states that are very, I would say, low density, low population, you might see some community land trusts that serve statewide, but that's again because there's so few people. So there are some even community land trusts here in Michigan who only serve like a 4-block radius because they really want to just focus on a very specific community. Those community land trusts also want to empower community decision makers in their ownership model. So typically the way they do that is by putting community stakeholders or even homeowners on their board. Most of us are going to be putting community leaders or homeowners on our board of directors. We even put that rule in our bylaws. So for ICCF, 1/3 of our members have to be representative of the community we serve, with a high preference for folks who live in the homes that we sell, if that makes sense. And then one of the most prevalent items that always comes up in a community land trust is that we want to steward the opportunities we provide long-term. That means that typically the opportunities we provide or those assets we're providing, they're there for a very, very long time. We want to provide opportunities for affordable homeownership permanently, not just tomorrow. We're not providing a homeownership opportunity to one person. We want to do it for generations of people. So you'll hear people like Jay and I talk about 89-year ground leases or permanent affordability. We're looking to really do this for a very, very long time and seek to provide opportunities continuously. And so you'll hear those terms a lot. And then finally, all of us, or many of us, are going to focus on affordable homeownership opportunities. That's really a core tenet of community land trusts. is that we focus on homeownership opportunities and community ownership to provide some sort of affordable or attainable homeownership. Other questions so far? Awesome. So it's a general idea of how CLTs work. So we've talked about the core tenants, we've talked about some of the history of them. This is the general idea of how CLTs work. So they get established, they pick out who they're gonna serve, they pick out maybe the communities they serve, who's gonna be on that board, who's gonna be making the decisions. This is how they do it. So they pool their resources and they acquire land. This could also include the acquisition of a property. They pick out who is going to be eligible to purchase the asset on top of that property. Could be that home, right? So a home that they build or renovate on top of it. That eligible household purchases the home. They do not purchase the land. That community land trust retains legal ownership of the land beneath the home. The homeowner leases the land from the land trust. It's kind of there. That could be $1, could be $60, could be $100, but that fee kind of helps the land trust steward remain alive and well, allows the CLT to help that household do certain things, etc. And at the end of that homeowner's time, using and living in that beautiful new house or that asset, they sell the home at a restricted, affordable, or attainable price. And then the process starts over again. The CLT, throughout that process, continues to own the land. Does that kind of make sense? They never sell that land. And the reason is because they get to decide, they kind of maintain ownership, they decide who's that eligible household, and they maintain that affordable homeownership opportunity forever. Yeah. Awesome. So again, how do CLTs preserve affordability permanently? So one of the key distinctions is that we see a difference between the improvement or the home and the land. So we divide that. And it's very similar. One of the ways we kind of easily define that for people is that this is very similar to a condo, right? So if you were to go and buy a condo, you are actually doing this exact same thing. You're not buying the land, you're not buying the common element, you're buying essentially a home on top of that land. This is the same exact idea. So after the CLT acquires that land, we just sell the home on top of it and we can continue kind of maintaining the land and making decisions about what happens. The way that we help define who that eligible person is and maybe restrict how the home is sold at an affordable price is through a ground lease. That ground lease not only protects the CLT, it also protects that home buyer, right? They know exactly what they're signing up for. They know exactly how to protect themselves. It also protects banks. This is something we don't really talk about, but doing a mortgage for a CLT homeowner is one of the safest mortgages banks can do. There's a less than 1% foreclosure rate on CLT homeowners because there are so many safeguards where the CLT can come in and help that homeowner essentially prevent foreclosure, right? So either we can help them with foreclosure prevention methods, we have a right of first refusal to purchase that home back, or we can help them find a new home buyer to essentially help them transition out of that house. When we talk about restricted home sales, the way that we do this, typically the process that we call it is a shared equity process. Essentially, When a home increases in value, what we do is we share the equity increase between the CLT and the home buyer. We'll kind of do a fun 8th grade math problem later where we walk through this shared equity. But that homeowner is going to get a portion of that increase in appreciation, and then the CLT will get the rest of it, which essentially is the subsidy used to make that home affordable for the next person, right? It's essentially invisible pretend money. So what's the saying? The homeowner still has to get a mortgage. They accumulate equity by paying down their mortgage, and that home still increases in value, just like every other home on the market. They pay property taxes, they have to maintain their home, they can make improvements to their home, they can paint their walls purple, they can paint their front door yellow, they can do what they want, right? They can do that. They can will their home to their heirs. It's a property, just like any other. And they can sell at any time, right? Which, if anyone in this room has used other affordable housing programs, some affordable housing programs do have time limits where you would have to return funds if you sold within a certain time period, right? Most CLT programs do not have that unless you paired them with other programs. But in a CLT, you could buy it today, sell it tomorrow. Would it make that CLT program manager want to cry a little bit? Yes, but that's okay. That's their problem. Now, what's different? So that buyer will be buying that home way below fair market value. So they're buying at a much more attainable and affordable price. The CLT will retain the land, the ownership of the land beneath the home, but that homeowner can do whatever they want to that land, right? They can still plant a tree in it. They can put whatever landscaping they want. The CLT might say, hey, we might need to approve a garage being built up before you do that. But that's a conversation, right? CLT leases the land via an 89-year ground lease to the owner for a monthly fee. Again, there may be stipulations around certain capital improvements, renting versus primary residence, etc. Certain things might be restricted. And we'll give some examples, like with our community land trust. And then when the current owner is ready to sell, they do sell to another eligible household, so someone who looks exactly or income-wise just like them. So they pass on that same opportunity at a pre-agreed price. Does that make sense? So why would someone buy a CLT home? The obvious one is always affordability. So these homes are always much more affordable than other homes on the market. But the other ones are typically that these are much lower risk. So especially, I give the example, in our program is first qualified, first served. That means no one has to negotiate. They're not throwing $20,000 cash at me to get in first in line, right? Right away, that means they're not waiving inspections. They're not going above the appraisal gap or anything like that. For our buyers, many of them can't afford to waive an inspection. They don't have the cash for a broken mechanical system. They have to go with a lower risk home. Homeownership obviously offers stability. Many of our homeowners are looking for an opportunity to just provide stability for their families. But homeownership in the open market is simply unattainable. It's too far out of reach, right? This is simply providing a rung in the ladder that's a little bit closer to what they can reach. CLTs provide a community that traditional homeownership does not. So because we're connected with a ground lease that's 89 years old, my joke when I close these homes is, hi, we're about to get married. That means I am one phone call away. If you have questions about taxes, if you need contacts for, your HVAC repairs, we sell both new construction and renovated homes. That means that on the day homeowners move into their houses, if they have an issue, I can immediately tell them who worked on that mechanical system last, right? So immediately they can give a call to someone who's been in their home, knows what the system is they're looking at, and we can work through it. You'd be shocked at how many times people have questions about taxes and how nice it is that they can come into the office and we can simply work through it. That's a community for a lot of folks who some of my buyers are the very first people in their family to ever own a home, right? So same thing for support. Simply having a support system, not only through having someone to call, but many of our homeowners now have the opportunity to serve on the board. They can support one another at events, one another through their board. It's amazing. And then you'd actually be surprised, but many of our homeowners do appreciate the idea of the opportunity that when they go to resell, someone like themselves will be purchasing the home after them. They do like the idea that this is a program that will serve someone similar to themselves or in a similar situation next for an affordable price. So this is the number one item we talk about. What is shared equity? So when a buyer purchases a CLT home, they agree to sell their home at a restricted amount. That's the big exchange of this whole thing. There are many resale formulas, but the most common one is appraisal based. And that's where you essentially share a certain percent of that value change over time or share the amount of equity. So we're going to use an example. And I just want to emphasize, every CLT is different. We're going to be using ICCF's shared equity format. Cool. Sorry, this is 8th grade math. This is a lot of slides, but we're going to do it. Okay. So when ICCF has a 25% shared equity model, that means that when our homeowners go to resell, they get 100% of their original investment. They're always going to get what they pay, right? 100%. Plus 25% of any increased market value. So in this example, the buyer becomes eligible and purchases an affordable home from the land trust. So this one's a little bit backwards, but I wanted to show you. So we pull an appraisal for a home. The home appraises at $200,000. Our land trust applies a CLT subsidy for $50,000. In this case, like let's say 25%. We sell the home for $150,000. That's what they have to pay for the home. In a couple of years, that homeowner decides they want to move on, right? So we pull a new appraisal, which we would pay for, and we learn that home has gone up in value. So the new value of that home is $300,000. We subtract the initial appraisal or the original full market value of $200,000. The change in the home's value is $100,000. 8th grade math. Sorry, guys. So the buyer would receive their share of appreciation. In this example, it's 25%. So 25% of $100,000 is $25,000. They would add that amount to the original purchase price and get the new sales price. So the original purchase price was $150,000 plus $25,000. The new sales price for the next person is $175,000. Cool. some important notes. I'll get to you in just one second. Important notes. CLTs only share appreciation. We do not share depreciation. This is the first thing everyone asks. That means that we provide a buffer of typically 20%, 25% for all of our buyers from a crash. Does that make sense? So if their home decreases in value, they would sell that home at 100% of their initial investment. So they would still sell it at what they bought it for. If things go horribly awry, their home is now worth less than what they purchased it for, the CLT would have the option to release that home from the program. If things tanked that bad, we would need to have a big conversation, right? Our entire industry would need to have a big conversation. CLTs, again, I want to really emphasize this. CLTs provide huge safeguards from foreclosure for our most vulnerable neighbors. Less than 1% of CLT home buyers foreclosed during the housing crash. I realize that I linked this, which is kind of dumb because none of you have the PowerPoint. So I apologize. I'll send it out. So just wanted to note that. Other notes. In Michigan, unfortunately, CLT taxes are currently, we don't have a great system. The coalition is actively working to solve that. But right now with the current system, they do have to currently pay both the land and the home taxes. So that is kind of just not the best way to do it. But all of your CLTs are working on a way to kind of make that equitable for their homeowners. We're working on it to make it solved, but it is something to be aware of if you're trying to set this up. Also, if you sell homes to folks with 80% or less AMI, there is a tax bill. If they buy it from a nonprofit, that their taxes can be set and assessed at the amount of their first mortgage. That's a really amazing tool that our legislators passed in 2022. We are so grateful for that. If you didn't know about it, please look it up. It is tax or legislative bill 156 of 2022. Please look it up. It's incredible. Unfortunately, that only applies when a home is sold from a nonprofit to someone with 80% AMI or below. So, John, sir, you had a question.
I might just prove I can't do it very minute, but wages have never kept up with home, or at least in my real estate investing history. Wages have never kept up with home increases. So the math you did shows a pretty significant increase, but it's still, that could happen in a year, right? That takes it out of the realm potentially of being affordable housing. Right, when that goes from 150 to 300,000, how do you deal with or manage that?
So the CLT home price actually would match better to wage increases than home price fair market. Yeah. So we can't control fair market wages or fair market values, and so that's actually the perk of CLTs, is that by restricting that overall increase, we're kind of helping to keep it manageable, right? Because the CLT home price is now, it only went up $25,000. Does that make sense? So now versus 300,000 or even 200,000, it's 175,000. Does that make sense?
I indeed missed that. So
nope.
8th grade math. Well, okay, sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah. So I think my point was saying we took a home that was worth $200,000. We sold it for $150,000 because we essentially took the value of that land. We said, don't pay for that land. Don't pay for that. Then a couple of years later or a year later, to your point, that home's value went up because the whole market went up. But that home, we're still selling it for less. We're selling it now for 175. Yeah.
Sorry.
No. It's a clarifying question that actually I got to make the point of that it keeps with wages, right? Yeah. Is there a question? Did I see it here? So, if there's no other questions, then we can kind of get into examples. Jay, do you want to make any points before we move on to examples?
And one quick question, what do you do about the cost of water and sewer hookups?
Yeah. So now you're getting into kind of our funding mechanisms, which I think both Jay and I are gonna have a fun time chatting about.
Okay.
But folks pay their own utilities, if that was kind of your question, once they move in. Those utilities are covered by the homeowner, right? So if that was your question.
Well, who pays for the hookups to the city water and sewer?
Yeah, that would be the CLT and the
Okay.
initial construction development cost.
Okay.
Do you have?
I do. So I know a lot of CLTs charge a minimal type ground lease fee.
Yes.
$30, $40. What about the ideal of a higher ground lease, let's say $125, to help and use that money to pay that land tax?
Yes.
Is there a benefit to that?
So her question was, ground lease, how some folks have different ground lease amounts, right? And so could you increase it to cover the land taxes? The unfortunate answer right now is because land taxes, your assessors by law cannot tell you the amount that your land taxes will be before a home is assessed, right? When it transfers ownership. And we want to respect that, right? That's the law they have to abide to. So, the reality is there's not really a way for us to predetermine how much those taxes will be, before it's split when you sell that home. And then it's also gonna change, especially if you scatter site build, or if you have multiple projects. Now, if tax legislation changes where land taxes under CLT homes become predictable, that is the hope, that we can pay those taxes with ground lease fees. That is absolutely the hope. Thank you for that question. I saw another hand. Hi.
You back up to the previous slide.
There you go.
The last bullet, in Michigan, CLT homes will have 2 tax assessments, one for the land, is that 2 tax bills?
Yes, and 2 parcel numbers.
Well, so there you go.
Yes.
Is the land taxed? Someone, who gets the homeowner's exemption?
Yes, so the homeowner gets 100% PRE. The land is 0%. So depending on where you live, right, it's a huge problem. Mr. J will be able to talk about that. And for me in Grand Rapids, that equates to about $200 a year. For Mr. J, that's a big problem. And so we are actively talking to our representatives about how to solve this. Because, right, this gets to an attainability and affordability issue. And there's I want to just celebrate our representatives, even some here in Southwest Michigan. There's been such a willingness to solve this in a timely manner. So we are hopeful that that'll get fixed.
So, well, there's the homeowner's exemption, somebody gets that,
The homeowner.
the homeowner gets that. At what rate or level is the land? Because that's at what rate is it assessed? Is it commercial property? Is it?
So it depends on your assessor's interpretation of the law.
Okay,
And each assessor is different. So I can't, right? So because there's no legislation, each assessor can interpret that by their own right.
and it's clear that the home is a residence, that's
Yes.
it's not like personal property tax.
So
For municipalities or for local government that assess personal property tax. That's a
Do we
resident.
consider
Yeah.
buildings on leased land?
Yes, exactly, sorry. So the home is a principal residency, so it gets full PRE. The land beneath it, so like in Grand Rapids, they're assessing the land at vacant land.
Vacant resident,
Yes,
R1.
yes, R1. But then in other cities, sorry,
Vacant,
yes,
lucky you.
we are very lucky.
So then is that reduced tax revenue for townships then?
So,
Yeah.
so it would be, yeah. Now, but again,
But you're taxing the house.
you're taxing the house.
Right,
Right.
but aren't these affordable housing? So isn't the CLT keeping these house values at a certain level to keep them affordable, but then tax revenue is at that level? So who's benefiting?
So I think we're getting into tax law, which is not my expertise. Want to be really respectful to the people who are much smarter than me. And just back up for a minute. And I'd love to maybe dig into it a little bit in the limited knowledge I have, maybe after this. But I do want to acknowledge, by law, they do have to split the land, right? And there are 2 bills. I also want to acknowledge that at the end of the day, our goal is to make these homes attainable for the people who live in them. And at the end of the day, taxes sometimes, very often, make homes unattainable for our neighbors, especially in places like Frankfurt, right? And so a goal of ours is to make taxes affordable and attainable for our neighbors. And that's just part of why our coalition is concerned about this. Okay, hi, this is our CLT. Again, my name is Dakota. I'm from Grand Rapids, urban community. I work for ICCF. In 2019, we started Community Homes Land Trust as essentially a program arm of our homeownership program, which we have actually been doing for 50 years. So ICCF has built almost 500 homes for ownership during our tenure, and we're really proud of that. In 2017, we became proud owners of almost 250 homes as a huge portfolio purchase from an out-of-state investor. And as part of that purchase, we made a big promise to our community funders who helped make that possible, that we would return some of those homes as homeownership opportunities to our neighbors. And we dug into a lot of the research of how we would do that equitably, how we would do that, with knowing our knowledge. And we dug into some of the facts of where those, let's say, 400 and some odd homes were. And we learned that while many of our neighbors, when we first started, had stayed in their home for a while, they kind of lived somewhat similar to the national average. In the last, let's say, 7 years, the folks who had purchased from ICCF were maybe living there 2 or 3 years and then moving out rather quickly and sometimes doubling, in a couple cases, quadrupling their investment rather quickly. And while I want to emphasize, we love that for them. That was great for them. At the same time, it was getting harder and harder for ICCF to create homeownership opportunities. Folks weren't selling us land as much. We couldn't find renovation opportunities. Grant opportunities were getting harder and harder to come by, right? Things were harder to make affordable. So we wanted to try and create opportunities. That's where we came up with the community land trust idea. So we've had some cool success. So in February of this year, or as of February of this year, we've sold 25 homes. And for at least a hot second, I get to say we are one of the largest community land trusts in the state of Michigan. And I say hot second because I think next month I lose that. So we're really excited. Our average home sales price is $143,000. In Kent County last month, the average home price was $361,000. So that's kind of cool. The average AMI of our households is 54%. And the way we're able to do that, it's actually 20% of our home buyers use the Key to Own program. Raise your hand if you've ever heard of that program. Yeah, all right, for those of you who don't know, folks who have ever been in Section 8, as they increase their living expenses, not expenses, as they increase their wages, they have the option to join a program where they essentially, rather than losing their voucher amount, they can put it into a bank or a savings account to use for a down payment assistance program. And then if they get the opportunity to purchase a home, they can actually convert that voucher into a mortgage payment, which is really, really freaking cool. So for some folks, it's a 10-year voucher conversion. For a lot of folks, so folks who might have a physical disability, they can actually convert that to a 30-year voucher payment. That also counts for senior citizens. So quite a few of our home buyers were seniors and bought their very, very first home with us, utilized that program. We're really proud of them for doing that. So very cool program. You don't need to have a CLT to utilize it, just so you know. Our average savings from the fair market or appraisal is almost 30%, which is pretty big. Our average family size is 3.2. We have sold to single family households all the way up to, we actually had a family of 13 that we sold a 6-bedroom home, and they converted the basement into a 2-bedroom, which was really cool. So, also 75% of our homeowners are people of color. So, in our community, we have a huge issue with a huge gap in the homeownership rate of Black families to white families. And so this program is just one step in the right direction for our community. So you had a great question about development. So I just want to touch on a few of the funding mechanisms that we've used. So I mentioned we purchased a portfolio. I just want to celebrate that was one really amazing opportunity for us. We did purchase a large portfolio. We did purchase those at the low market rate, which allowed us to rehab and sell those homes kind of below the fair market appraised value. Just to be super transparent, we net zeroed at that. That did not pay for a minute of my time, but it did serve our mission. So we're really excited about that. Kind of launched our first couple homes and allowed us to then petition some donors for the next couple. We also had a revolving line of credit with a private donor. We had a donor who made a significant contribution that they asked us to essentially use as a revolving line. It was a really amazing opportunity that I'd encourage you guys to talk to. They donated about $2.5 million, which we used, but then had to immediately replenish. They then walked away with that funds, and really we were just able to use it as essentially like a construction loan for each home. We did use Mishta Missing Middle. It did not work for our single family homes, but we are using it actively on a large condo deal, and we are super grateful for it there. It makes sense for us when we had a larger scale project. One of the best uses for us is we worked with our county and our city to fix our home program, kind of our pricing policy, and now we have done 6 different single family homes using the home program, if you guys are familiar. Right now, we're in the middle of developing a large 27-unit condo development, and we have a ton of funding there, including Mishta's Missing Middle, home dollars, a direct HUD allocation, MEDC's RAP program, which is essentially ARPA funds, brownfield dollars, and then if any of you are familiar, we also were the first folks in Grand Rapids to utilize the housing TIF dollars. Would love to tell you how it went. We are still being reviewed by Mishta for their housing plan. We're almost 50% of the way through construction, so hopefully we get approved soon. We have full confidence, and Mishta has been great partners there. So The future, so we have 14 homes under construction as part of that condo deal. So we did split that project. It is mixed income. We're serving 80 to 120% AMI buyers there. We have 2 other single family homes under construction as well, utilizing home funds. We have purchased a lot in Wyoming, Michigan, where we're going to be building 8 new homes for our land trust program. And we have applied for funding for home there as well to fund those. And then we are also applying for funds for 2 more single family homes that we hope to get started. Handing it over to Jane.
Thank you. That's gonna be a hard presentation to follow, right from the heart, from the base, thank you. And, well, I appreciate very much the opportunity to be here today with you to share a little bit of a different story from a small rural community where we, really felt the need to, bootstrap, you might say, some houses in town to fill a need that we all saw, but we didn't have, you know, a huge donor, at least not initially. So, again, we started looking at our housing in the city of Frankfort in about 2018 as a real, in a dire situation. What did we do? You know, city said, well, we need to look at and understand what that housing need is. And that was in about 2018 when we formed an ad hoc housing committee. It wasn't really an official part of the city of Frankfort, but we wanted to look at it and see what is this, what's the housing, what's causing our shortage of homes. So we really started with really an on-the-ground survey, something that we did kind of informally, just to ask our community what were their feelings about housing. And what we really learned, we looked at, you know, Michigan studies, we looked at Housing North did a study, and they were telling us that we needed, you know, hundreds and thousands of homes. That was all fine, well and good, but we want to find out from our community, what do they see, what do they need? And overwhelmingly, the comment was it's workforce. We can't afford to live and work in our community. And that initially was, we were talking a lot about rental. Fortunately, we do have some LIHTC projects in town where we can serve our under 80% AMI community, but we have nothing beyond that for our workforce. So that was initially an identification. And then what really emerged was a real strong conversation about home ownership. And we all kind of perked up and said, that makes, you know, a huge amount of sense. You know, as Dakota indicated, it's a permanent form of home ownership, much more security. It will really cause there to be a much longer term relationship between that homeowner and our community, which is what we were looking for. So before I get started, I wonder if we could cue up a quick video. One of our board members is an entertainer from Nashville. So he does our marketing, and this is a little clip he put together for us.
And just getting tired of it.
Frankfort is such a desirable, beautiful place to live, and many people end up wanting to have a second home here. We love those people and they are respected here. But also to have the infrastructure that keeps a town like this, there has to be the schools, there has to be the hospitals, there has to be the restaurants, there has to be the hardware store, the library, and the post office, and the grocery store, and all the things for it to be that desirable second home community.
Often in situations like that, the demand for housing exceeds the supply of housing.
We're really forging new ground, literally and figuratively with the land trust. A community land trust is somewhat of a unique organization. A homeowner who buys a land trust home does buy the home that sits on the land, but the land trust in perpetuity retains ownership of the land. When that owner goes to sell, they also have to sell to another home buyer that meets the qualifications. In the land trust for Frankfort, the qualifications are you must fall within a certain percentage of guidelines and you must live or work in Benzie County.
This past year, we hired 3 new teachers at the elementary school.
And one of the concerns that each of our candidates expressed was whether or not they'd be able to find a place to live.
What we found is that when housing is available, it's often unaffordable, it's too far away, so there's a long commute. Sometimes people can't get long-term rental agreements, and sometimes that housing is really substandard, that's really not good living.
What I think is so beautiful about the model is that it's sustainable.
So the Frank Berry Community Land Trust was officially formed in 2022, was really grown from the city of Frankfurt's study of our housing needs. And then from that point forward, they formed the Housing Commission, and then the Housing Commission, their next step was to form a nonprofit land trust.
2 homes were constructed in 2023, and the inventory will be added to in 2024 with 2 more homes. First applied for land trust housing in early spring of 2023. That spring was full of paperwork and phone calls, but by October of 2023, I was a homeowner.
Finding that missing middle and getting people living here year round is only gonna benefit our community as a whole.
And as someone's a business owner, if I see that, I just want to invest in the community even more. Because we're just developing a better, bigger community that helps everyone.
We're allowing more people to join this fabulous community who really feel that Frankfurt is the place to be, which it is, obviously.
Well, I wish the voices would align with the video, but you get the gist of it. So it's a fun group of people. Frankfurt is across the bay from a small community called the Village of Alberta. Together, we have a population of 1,600, which is small by any measure. One of the challenges we face is it's a very desirable place for second home ownership for short-term rentals, which has really in part caused a significant, value increase. It's really been a hyperinflation, you might say, of our home values. And an extreme, shortage of housing, for a first home buyer to buy in our city. I think, you were at 330, our average home sale is 430. So it's difficult to find anything. And then you're always competing with that second home buyer who has cash that can close in a week, and our homeowners really don't have a chance. So anyway, this ad hoc, fast forward a little bit, we did form, in our land trust in 2020, we filed our articles of incorporation for the Frankfurt Area Community Land Trust. What got us to that point was, again, the study that was done, recommendations. We actually were very fortunate. I'll just name a name. Tony Linty at that time, who is now with Mishta, was the housing director in Traverse City. So we had Tony down and said, Tony, if you had a clean slate in a small community, what would be your steps? He said, first, you need a housing commission. There we should focus on rental. Let's find some partnerships and do some rentals for your missing middle rentals. Okay, we got that. We got 12 units now in a couple of years. And so the next step is really you need a nonprofit in order to fundraise. And you should look at the community land trust model to see if that works for you. And we all fell in love immediately, just based upon, being able to create affordability. More importantly, it's the perpetuity of that ownership and the ability to continue to recycle that home back to the next buyer of need. A huge thing for us. So we formed our articles of incorporation in 2020. We put our bylaws together in 21, so it took some time. We're a city, it takes time. In 2022, we finally got our 501c3 status. And then the next thing was to find some land. It's not an easy task in a small resort community when prices have gone up significantly. We're about 1 square mile, is the size of our city, so it's not big. And a lot of those properties, as you can understand, were built on already. So it's hard to find something, but we did find 4 lots that were kind of on the east end of town. And interestingly, it was an area where some of our business owners in the 1970s were building workforce housing in the 1970s. They needed it then, we need it now. And as many, I don't know how many of you remember, but in the late seventies, interest rates went to 18%. So it kind of, their whole effort stalled and left 4 vacant lots with partially dug basements. So the sites were a mess. It was on the side of a hill, basements were dug, trees growing every which direction after them in years. So it was kind of an interesting site. And that was located on Grove Place. So we then named, of course, our first project, Grove Place Homes, and we're excited to move forward. Next came the challenge of what do you build and who's going to build? Many of you have found there aren't a lot of contractors out there. And in our area, what's happening with contractors, they're building multi-million-dollar homes along the lakeshore. So they're really not interested in building starter homes. It's difficult when you're working for low margins to build a starter home. So we were really faced with some challenges. First, we looked at modular home construction. When we came out of the gate in 2021, right after the pandemic, and you know what happened with modular home construction costs, they were through the roof. And then the next problem was the availability, with the supply chain issues. They were talking a year to a year and a half for delivery. So it was difficult for us to really start a mission with modulars. We looked at stick built, and of course, what we ran into there was the high cost of labor and the shortage of labor in the area, but also the high cost regionally for our building materials. Our third look was at panelized construction, and we were very fortunate to find a small family-owned company in Sugar Creek, Ohio, that understood our mission, supported our mission of supporting our community, and came in with a price reflective of that support and schedule that made things work for us. So we were able to start construction on our first homes in midsummer of 2023. And we're very excited to say that we finished those and closed on our first 2 homes later that fall. So it was an accomplishment for us. Certainly a small CLT. One of the biggest challenges that we face is funding. We started out with basically a private individual purchasing the lots for us and conveying them back, holding a mortgage. So that's how we started our land ownership. We didn't even own the land, but we had a deed and we had a mortgage. So we looked at what's the price of the home, what's the total project going to cost. We went to the bank and we talked about construction financing and how are we going to get this thing off the ground. And at the same time, Michigan came out with their missing middle program for housing, which we were very excited about, and we applied. And gosh, that was, I think, in December of 23, and we were awarded. We're like, wow, hooray. And we can get off to the races, but of course, we soon found out that that grant is paid once the homes are completed. So we had this gap in need of funding. One of our board members suggested that we approach our local banks to see if we could find the attractive rate of return on our certificate of deposit that we would then use against a line of credit. It would be the collateral for a line of credit that we could use to build our homes. And then once the homes are completed, we would simply pay back that line of credit. The CD depositors could withdraw their money back out of the CD. It was a pretty simple program, something that really we looked at would save us somewhere about $3,000 per home in terms of the construction interest rate, plus the just the closing costs alone in that construction financing. We shared that information with CEDM, and Teresa over there has already passed it on to a few other folks in the community and in the state. What did it boil down to for us? The CD rate was posted at 3.75, and our members needed to deposit a minimum of $25,000 in that CD. Our goal was $500,000 to build 2 homes. So we had each bank set up for a $250,000 line of credit for us. We printed some flyers. We posted them socially. We sent them to a number of our supporters. And within a week, we were full. We kind of oversold on that first group to fund us. So strong support from our community, certainly everyone in our community understands the housing need and the shortage that's there. And one group that I'll speak to in particular is our second home owners, our vacation owners, and those folks, they know they're the problem. They know they're the ones that caused our issues. So they're the first ones that really stepped up to the plate to help us fund that CD program. And today are amongst our largest contributors. So we're happy to say that that program was successful and got us underway. Then the next challenge we had is we're building our homes. We're all volunteers. We don't have a staff. And we looked at, okay, I've been in real estate, so I know the game that has to be played in terms of selecting who's the buyer. In a small community, we didn't want to select that buyer. We didn't want to vet that buyer. We really didn't want to know their personal financial information. So we looked at it for a third party to help us with that, and we found the Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency in Traverse City, which is a nonprofit. So we were going to enter into an agreement. We pay a fee for them to vet, take applications from all of our buyers. Then help each of our buyers go through homeownership classes so they understand what homeownership's about, what are your taxes, how does the ground lease work that you'd be entering into. So as a land trust, we're building the homes, but we really don't know who's going to buy them until about 30 days prior to their completion, when NMCAA would then introduce us to the buyers. And it really eliminated that, what you might say in a small community is kind of a favoritism in terms of who gets the homes, because we didn't know. And I would cite there was a CLT in Northern Michigan, if you remember. One of the, I think it was a city council member, ended up getting one of the CLT homes, and it blew up that community because, again, it was, why did she get the house? You know, so one of those things. And so we're very happy with our relationship with NMCAA. They also helped us sell our homes. So they have a network of people in our region who are looking for home ownership, and that was very helpful. And in addition, they help us with our missing middle Michigan grant in terms of income verifications that we needed to supply the initiative for that. So overall, we're very excited about our little, I would say our little land trust, and we continue to grow. And I'll share some things about what we have accomplished real quickly. So we did build 4 homes on Grove Place, our Grove Place homes. They were 3-bedroom, 2-bath homes, about 1,200 square feet. Those homes were appraised at $280,000, just to give you some numbers for your math. We sold those homes for $210,000. That appraisal was about a year old. They now are appraising for about $320,000. So they've already had growth in market value. And I guess I'll throw out a number because I'm sure that's what everybody needs to know is what's it cost to build one of our houses. And it was pretty darn close to that $250,000 number I gave you earlier. It was $246,000 was our all-in cost without land. So it's what it cost, a little over about $206 a square foot with appliances. Appliances was kind of a fun story because it wasn't in our original budget. So we put a little flyer together. We had little fundraiser parties. We said, who wants to buy appliances for our new neighbors over in Grove Place? And people rushed to us and said, here's my check. So it's $4,300 for appliance packages. It was another way for our community to support what we were doing and know that their funds were directly impacting someone else's life. Fun story. So I'll say that we as a community celebrate small things. And so we do celebrate that we now have a librarian, and she runs our kids center at the library. So she's got a home, she's in our community. At Storm Cloud Brewing, we have a beer brewer, important part of any community. We have human residents. We have a graphic designer, a food store manager, skilled trades carpenter, future school counselor. She's just finishing her master's degree. And we have an active community volunteer who has some physical limitations, And we're able to put her to work within the city of Frankfurt, doing a few things that, she's very talented at. So we're excited to have her as a new member of our community. We did receive $120,000 ARPA grant, through our county, through Benzie County. We also received $20,000 from the little city of Frankfurt. So they passed another ARPA to us, which was our seed money to start the project. That's how we got going. And then later, we were very fortunate to follow through on the missing middle grant. And we're awarded $240,000, which is now coming out of Grove Place Homes into vacant land for our next project, where we are in the purchase of a half-acre property from one of our local churches. They had excess property, they had building needs, they had to put roofs on their church and their house and their parsonage. So we're able to work something out there where we're buying their excess land, and there we'll build 4 homes on that half-acre parcel. That's our next project. So we'll be looking for infrastructure grants. Talking to code about, okay, the home program, and funding our next 4. I guess I would conclude with, one last thing, we're rebranding. One of the things we ran into for our fundraising, which just in our community, we have averaged between $75,000 and $200,000 annually in terms of our fundraising. Just a couple of fundraising events, relationships with people that we know in our community, one real big one, one year. So what we are running into is our name, Frankfurt Area Community Land Trust, doesn't talk about homes. And so we are rebranding. It's going to be Housing Trust of Benzie. So we put housing in there. We also have Benzie in there because some of the neighborhoods that we want to work in are not in Frankfurt. They're nearby, they're inland from us. And so we did want to broaden our scope and be able to work in other communities. So we'll be doing some rebranding, a new website, our next for us. Yeah, that's really the Frankfurt. Very exciting. You know, it's a small group. We're all volunteers. We have one paid executive director. It's a half, basically it's a half salary executive director. So we again have been able to do things very inexpensively, and have seven board members who are energetic and get things done for us in our community. So thank you. I'm happy to open up questions, and back to Dakota.
Nice. What questions may you have? If you don't. Thanks.
Great.
Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm struggling a little bit with how you manage, like, Jay, you had a specific, you had your folks in Frankfurt that you wanted to house because they work there, tourist area and so on. You have targets, very specific targets for the community you want to serve, but I know that maybe I saw this online or there that they have to live in Benzie County. So
Yes.
Can you guys get into maybe more specifics on how you put walls around who can apply so that you get you're providing housing to the people that are your target audience?
I can start.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. So first and foremost, everyone has to abide by fair housing laws. So I know we worked really closely with our fair housing center just to make sure we do not have a prioritization. So one thing that we decided to do is we don't have like a thing, a location specific priority or point system or anything like that. What we have found works really well is that we partner with local nonprofits specific in our community. We give them advance notice that applications are going to be coming out. So we very targeted, right? We're like, hey, neighborhood association in specific community right next to my development. Applications are going to go live in 2 weeks, right? Do folks in your community know? Here are flyers, get ready. And then ICCF, we do have our own brokerage. So we do list homes on the MLS. We love that, it works well, but we inform neighborhood associations and internal clients and internal list 2 weeks before anything goes to the open public. And that helps us with those location goals. Also, for us, we really emphasize income is our main goal, right? So our main qualifier is that we want folks who income qualify for our housing, and that's what we're looking for. And at the end of the day, if you don't qualify for, if you're above that cap, then we say no to you. So that's our big thing.
And for us, I think it was simply the sheer shortage of homes in our community and the support that we had from Frankfurt that, if we were gonna serve all our needs, we wanted to keep those homes limited to living and or working in Benzie County, so that we certainly were serving the needs of folks that are currently in our community and not simply supplying housing for those outside of our community. So that was something that we had to cross that bridge early on in our bylaws and how we established ourselves.
So are any of your like project areas scattered site, or are they all like in one tract?
Mine are all scattered site, except for the condos. All of mine are on separate parcels. So your 4 are together, because that was one project, but yeah, every single one of mine. So we've done new construction on separate parcels, rehabs, but all of them are scattered. The condo will be our first like big project.
One thing.
Yeah.
And do you have, what are the mortgage terms for the buyers?
Yeah, so one fun fact about our organization, so ICCF is a HUD certified housing counseling agency. And that means that the worst part of my job when we got started was I literally couldn't even list a home for sale until I found 3 mortgage companies to essentially offer buyers because it's for everyone else in the room. HUD certified housing counseling agencies have a rule that you cannot sway buyers to a single lender. And so in order for me to even list a home, I had to find at least 3 lenders who would fund a CLT home in the state of Michigan to our CLT specifically before I could even show it as an option. Because if you show more, even showing 2 homes is technically under HUD guidelines, that's considered swaying. You have to have at least 3 options. So in the state of Michigan now, thanks to the coalition, because we share resources, there are a minimum of 9 banks who will fund CLTs. Our CLT here in Grand Rapids, we have about 11 who will fund. There's 9 who cover the entire state. Everyone in this room could probably talk to a local lender. We have a recommended process for how to get banks to partner with you. Every lender has different terms, different down payment assistance programs, different stuff. Some of them portfolio, but Fannie and Freddie both have a CLT program. It's almost identical to FHA. It is not FHA, but it is literally almost identical. So what's wonderful is a lot of the lenders do utilize that program. Have you guys gotten approved for Fannie and Freddie?
Yes. Both.
Great.
Yeah.
So CLTs have to get approved by Fannie and Freddie, but as soon as they are, that means that all of those lenders automatically get those terms, which is huge. It's amazing.
So are they up to 30 years?
All of them. Yeah, they're conventional loans. Yeah. Sorry. Right now FHA does not approve CLT home mortgages. It's a weird, like literally a weird term. So they have to get a conventional loan.
They have to have 20% down.
No, it depends on the lender, right?
Okay.
Some lenders, it's 0%. I've seen a lot that just require 3, 2. Some of our lenders, it's $1,000. Yeah, I think right now, does Mercantile cover down here? Yeah, right now Mercantile is doing $1,000 down. It's awesome. That's not just CLTs, by the way. Any other questions? Great. Thanks for having us.
Thank you.